So I appreciate everybody joining us at this time. It has been a crazy couple of months, and we understand that you guys have been much anticipating the RRF fund to be released and to be able to apply for it. As we opened up the application yesterday, or I should say the SBA opened up the application yesterday, I got lots and lots of questions in my inbox. I think I came in at 8 o'clock and I had about 100 emails that I had to go through and sift through. And thank goodness a lot of them were really easy to help and get in. And we had a bunch of applications going yesterday, but we also have a bunch that don't have, or that have a lot of questions that haven't been able to apply or finish their submission yet. And so we're really excited to be able to answer those questions for you today. My name is Megan McFall. I'm the director here at USU Spark. And part of Spark, we actually house the USU Blanding Small Business Development Center. The Small Business Development Centers are funded through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and we are incredibly grateful for that funding because it allows us to put on these incredible workshops and webinars for everybody across the United States, but we're especially grateful for those here in our area. I want to give a few minutes to the Women's Business Center, who is our co-host. I'm going to turn the time over to Debbie Drake, make her a co-host so that she can share her screen, because I know that she wants to share some information real quick.
Well, thank you, Megan. And yes, we'll get this up and going. I just want to introduce those of you who are not familiar with the Women's Business Center and what we do and where we, let me see here, share screen. Just tell you a little bit about some of the resources that we have. So we work in the entire state of Utah. We are also funded by the SBA, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we work with, we're hosted by Salt Lake Chamber. So everything that we do is free to help you grow your businesses. We work with women business owners at all levels. We have business advising, we do training, and we help you find the resources that you need to be successful. So we're glad to be able to help sponsor this today, and glad if you guys have any questions, you can get a hold of us. Just look for wbcutah.org. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Megan.
Thanks, Debbie. So we appreciate everybody for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and turn the time over to our SBA representatives here from the Utah District and let them present to you what COVID release options there are available to you at this time, specifically the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So I'm going to turn the time over to John and Marla, and I've already made them co-hosts, so go ahead and take that away, John.
Hi, hey Megan, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, we're just trying to get the PowerPoint up and shared with you. There it is, right there. Can you see that okay?
We can.
Okay, turn it over to Marla.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to Megan and Debbie for hosting us. We really do appreciate it. And I'm Marla Trollin. I'm the director for the SBA here in Utah. And I just want to quickly touch on some programs that are still available for those folks that are struggling through the pandemic and providing assistance for you all. So most of you are familiar with the recent legislation, the CARES Act, the Economic Aid Act, as well as the American Rescue Act. Billions of dollars set aside for small businesses to sort of weather the storm. And SBA, as a result, rolled out various programs. One of them you all are familiar with is the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP program. We had our first draw available last spring, and then we rolled out the ability for folks to apply for a second PPP starting in January. We We also have our economic injury disaster loans, or what we refer to as EIDL. Those have been available for years and years through SBA, but they typically are available for natural disasters. And then we just had to kind of change things around and make them available for this economic disaster that we've been dealing with. We also have our targeted EIDL advances. As Megan mentioned, we just rolled out our shuttered venue operator grants, or SVOG. Those were available. The portal was open on April 8th. Unfortunately, we had so many people apply at one time that it completely crashed the system. And our vendors had to go back and sort of revamp that portal to allow for the thousands and thousands of applications that came in. So that reopened last week. And then the Restaurant Revitalization Fund program that we just launched yesterday. The portal is now open for applications. So I'll spend most of my time touching on those. But we've also made some subsidy payments to our existing SBA loans and enhancements to our 7A and 504 loans, and have been working very, very closely with our SBA resource partners, including, of course, the SBDCs and Women's Business Centers. So this is just a visual representation of all the different programs that we have available right now. Just a quick note on the PPP program. We have heard that the funds may be exhausted, and what I'm hearing is that some of the, I think there's around 30 billion or so that's still out there. However, I think we're setting that aside for those applications that are already in the queue. So it's possible the SBA may close that program down here sooner than we anticipated. It was supposed to stay open until the end of May. Okay. Here's the appropriations that were set aside. I'm not going to go through all this. I think Megan's going to share this presentation with all of you. The Restaurant Revitalization Program had 28.6 billion set aside nationwide. This is being administered through our Office of Cap Access in SBA. And I just want to note that although 28.6 billion sounds like a whole lot of money, that money is going to go very, very quickly. We have set aside $5 billion for eligible entities with gross receipts during 2019 of not more than 500,000. We've set aside $4 billion for applicants with 2019 receipts of 501,000 to 1.5 million. And then we've set aside 500 million for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of not more than 50,000. Okay, in the first 21 days, keep in mind that we're going to be prioritizing our grant funds to women-owned, veteran-owned, and those socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses or minority-owned businesses. And that has to have at least 51% ownership in those categories. It is a self-certification process when you apply. However, we probably will look for documentation to back that up at some point, okay? These are all the different eligible entities. We were so pleased to see that it's broad in scope. It's not just for restaurants. It includes caterers and food stands, food trucks, food carts, saloons, brew pubs, breweries, wineries. And then there's also the category for snack and beverage bars, and that can include coffee shops, ice cream shops, bakeries, inns, etc. So again, pretty broad in scope. Ineligible entities are those state and local government operated businesses, those that may have affiliates or own or operate more than in 20 different locations throughout the state as of March 13th, 2020. Of course, you're going to be ineligible if you've already have a pending application and or have received the shuttered venue grant. if you permanently closed your doors, so say you closed your doors about 6 months ago and you didn't plan to reopen, you will not be eligible for this fund. And then also nonprofit organizations, okay? And then those that are in bankruptcy, and you can see the stipulations down below. The award amount is providing funding up to 5 million per location, but not to exceed 10 million for the total. And that includes applicants and their affiliates. The minimum award will be $1,000 per business. And then we're going to look at this calculation breakdown. So under the first calculations, that applies to applicants in operation prior to or on January 1st, 2019. We're going to be looking at your 2019 gross receipts minus the 2020 gross receipts. And keep in mind, with all these calculations, we're going to be subtracting out any PPP loan amounts that you've received, whether it's a first draw, a second draw, or both. Those will be subtracted out of the funding total. Okay, under calculation 2, it's applicants that began operations partially through 2019. We're going to be looking at the 2019 monthly gross receipts times 12 minus the 2020 gross receipts. Again, subtracting out the PPP loans. And then under the third calculation, this applies to applicants that began operations on or between January 1st, 2020 and March 10th, 2021. And applicants that have not yet opened, but have still incurred those eligible expenses. So what we'll be looking at there is the amount spent on the eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, minus the 2020 gross receipts, and then subtracting out the PPP loans. Keep in mind the gross receipts don't include any amounts of funding that you may have through a PPP loan or EIDL loans or advances or target advances, that type of thing. And it also doesn't include the state and local small business grants under the CARES Act. So if you receive something possibly through the state or a county that was funded under the CARES Act, that is not included, okay? The proceeds can be used for a variety of purposes, payroll costs. You can also use it for sick leave, interest on mortgages, rent payments, utility payments, maintenance expenses, food and beverage expenses, supplies, operational expenses, etc. The covered period is February 15th, 2020 through March 11th, 2023. And then any funds that aren't spent during this time frame would be sent back to the government, okay, back to SBA. There's various ways to apply for the fund. SBA now has point of sale vendors that you can reach out to, but there's a listing there below. But of course, we do have our portal open now, and you can see the link on the slide. We do have a hotline, that 844 number listed there. We do have a lot of people manning that hotline. So our understanding so far from business owners is that they're hearing back from them, or they're getting someone on the line right away to talk to. So if you run into any snags, just let us know, okay? Here's sort of a breakdown of the documents that you would need under the different calculation amounts. So for calculation 1 and 2, you're going to need the SBA form 3172, your tax verification, including your 4506T, 2019 gross receipts and tax returns, and then 3 months of bank statements. You can see the other documents that are preferred, as well as those that are accepted by SBA. Then under calculation 3, it's pretty much the same thing. You'll have to fill out the application form, as well as have tax verification, the 4506T, and then the 3 months of bank statements. So you won't need the 2019 gross receipts. Okay. Additional information that will be required. You don't need to have a DUNS number or be registered in SAM. This is different than the Shutter Venue Grant Fund that we have available. That one, you do need to have a DUNS number and be registered in SAM, but you don't for the RRF. Applications are processed in the order of receive, so keep in mind that we already have hundreds of thousands of applications that are being processed. There, people were just waiting for the portal to open. So if you plan to apply for this, please get your application in ASAP. And then make sure, to the extent possible, that you have all the required documentation up front, because if you don't, SBA will not be able to go in and make those adjustments for you. And it will pull you out of the queue, wherever you fall in the queue, to revise your application. So you want to be as thorough up front before you hit that send button as possible. Okay. As mentioned, from days 1 to 21, we're going to be doing the priority for those women-owned businesses, the veterans, and then the minority-owned businesses. Okay, and then on day 22, we're going to open it up for those outside of that priority, and then they'll just be processed until all the funds are expended. Okay. And I just mentioned this, the priority, and that you have to self-certify in the application. Okay. The impacts that this has on some of the other programs, as mentioned, the PPP in particular, those will be subtracted out of the funds that you will receive under this program. So when the SBA approves the RRF grant, the SBA will decline any unapproved applications for a PPP loan from that same applicant. And that you'll no longer be eligible for additional PPP loans. Now, keep in mind, as I mentioned, we're probably close to shutting that down if those funds have been exhausted and or set aside for those applications that are already in the queue. If you have received a PPP loan, just make sure you use the same EIN number that you did in your PPP application. And then an applicant must withdraw any outstanding PPP application in the system if they know it's still sitting there. Okay, the applicant that has not applied for, received a Shutter Venue grant will be eligible as well. However, if you have received the grant, you will not be able to be eligible. Okay. So there will be a reporting mechanism in place back to SBA. We have this use of funds assessment that we're going to go through in terms of looking at the total or the detailed expenditure report and certification for the required period. So the small business owner will be responsible for doing that. And until the applicant completes that use of funds assessment, the applicants are required to provide self-reported audited data detailing the use of the distributed funds each year through 2023. We're going to be providing more detail on this in the coming weeks, so more information forthcoming. Okay, the best practices, again, as I mentioned, make sure your documentation is as complete as possible and that you've submitted all the required documents through the portal. Use any resources that you have, whether it's CPAs or accounting professionals. Of course, refer to your SBDC rep or the Women's Business Center if you have specific questions on your application for further guidance. And then, as I mentioned, SBA will not be able to go back in and make those corrections for you. Let's see. Here is the center call-in line for questions that you have, whether it's on the status of your application or the application that you already submitted. You can simply call this 844 number. And then we listed here some other resources that are available, including an instructional video, our resource page or our landing page, as well as a guide and then a sample application. Okay, the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, as I mentioned, that portal opened last week or reopened last week. These are all the eligible entities that can get grant funding. So, you know, it's going to include venue operators, promoters, theater producers, live performing arts organizations, museums, zoos and aquariums, motion picture theaters, talent representatives. And then as long as you can show that you are fully operational on February 29th, 2020, that is also a requirement. And have a gross earned revenue loss of at least 25% from one quarter in 2020 as compared to 2019. It has to be the same quarter that you're looking at. So say you want to look at quarter one in 2019, you'd have to use that same quarter one for 2020 as a comparison. You have to show that you intend to resume your operations, and then you can't be owned or controlled by any entity on the National Security Exchange. For the first 60 days, $2 billion has been set aside for businesses with no more than 50 employees. Okay. Again, this is just a further breakdown of the various entity categories. I won't get into that. I think Megan, like I said, is going to provide these slides to you. You will not qualify if your place of business is not in the U.S. Or is not primarily operated in the U.S. You won't qualify if your live performance and sales products have any sort of sexual nature, you've received more than 10% of your 2019 gross revenue from the federal government, or you're owned and operated by agencies in more than one country or more than 10 states. If you have 5 affiliates who have already received the SVOG, keep that in mind too, you won't qualify, or a museum who has affiliates and have already received up to that $10 million threshold in SVOG awards. Okay, again, the amount goes up to 10 million. And then this is just sort of a breakdown of that. If you were in operation on January 1st, 2019, the grant amount is going to be calculated by looking at 45% of your gross earned revenue during 2019. If you were in operation as of or after January 1st, 2019, the grant amount is the average monthly gross earned revenue for each month in operation 2019. You multiply that by 6. Again, this will be reduced by the amount of any PPP loans received, and then the amount back to you will be distributed either in installments or a lump sum payment. And then down below, we just provided the definitions that we're looking at for gross earned revenue versus gross revenue. Okay. Application and priority. So again, the portal is now up and running. In the first 14 days, grants will be awarded to the entities with 90% or greater revenue loss. And then in the next 14 days, it will be for those entities with 70% or greater revenue loss. And then the revenue loss period that we're looking at is April 1st through December 31st, 2019 and 2020. Again, you do have to have a DUNS number and you have to be registered in sam.gov to qualify. And then there's just the app. There's a link to the application checklist, and this comes in real handy if you're planning to apply. You can look at that checklist in advance. Okay, there's a link to the landing page for the grant. The proceeds, again, broad in scope, can be used for payroll costs, rent, utility, mortgage payments, debt payments, worker protection expenditures. You can also use it for payments to independent contractors. And keep in mind, this is pretty important for a lot of our venues here in the state. You can use it for administrative costs, state and local taxes and fees, which is great for us here in Utah, as well as operating leases as of February 15th, 2020, insurance payments, advertising, etc. You can't use it to purchase real estate or make payments on loans after February 15th, 2020. Or use it for relending or things of political nature. So just other things to keep in mind. You maybe use the costs incurred from March 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2021. You may be eligible to receive a second grant if there's funding still available for expenses through June 20th, 2022. And again, you would return any of the amount used not used within the first year of the grant disbursement. Okay, and here's just a link to a YouTube video recording on the SBOG. The PPP program, again, I'm just going to be super quick on this. Don't know how much longer this is going to be available for folks. But you can see here the list of eligible entities. It does include tribal businesses and ag businesses, as well as nonprofits. We did expand that through one of the further acts under Congress to local newspapers, television, and radio stations, as well as marketing organizations, and then 501c nonprofits and internet publishing organizations. The proceeds can be used for payroll costs, mortgage, rent, utility, etc. But if you want the full forgiveness, you have to use at least 60% for payroll costs. Okay, and this is just the loan terms, maturity 5 years, 1% interest rate for the remaining fund if you don't get full forgiveness, and then the payment deferment. Okay, and this is the same loan terms for second draw loans, just slightly different. And then additional requirements. If you want to get a second draw PPP, you had to have received a first draw PPP, obviously. And you on the second draw, you can't have more than 300 employees versus the first draw was 500 employees or less. And again, you have to demonstrate that 25% reduction in gross receipts between the same quarters in 2019 and 2020. Okay, and here's how you go about applying for a PPP. Our lenders are out there on our website. Megan or Debbie can help you find those resources if you need them. Here's the application documentation that you'll need. And then if you have any questions as it pertains to your PPP loan, you can simply email us here in the district office, and we have access to the system. We can look up your loan and see what the status is. Okay, economic injury disaster loans or EIDL, just quickly. These are still available. The funds for this is, there's still quite a bit out there. So you should be able to apply for this for quite some time yet. The eligibility criteria is that you have to be a small business under SBA size standards, 500 employees or less. Private nonprofit organizations and small ag co-ops also can apply. And then you have to be independently owned and operated. The amount now goes up to 500,000. We did cap it for quite some time at 150. But we recently raised that up to 500 to cover 24 months of economic injury. The interest rate is 3.75 for small businesses, 2.75 for nonprofits. Maturity up to 30 years with a complete payment deferment for the first year. Hold on one second. Okay. Payroll, it can be used for payroll costs, fixed debt, accounts payable, but you can't use it to refinance long-term debt. You have to have an acceptable credit history. So we have had quite a few small business owners that have contacted us and were declined an idle loan. Well, it may be because of your credit history. So do keep that in mind. We are going to be pulling a credit report for it. You also have to demonstrate that you can repay it back to the SBA, and then all loans over $25,000 have to be secured with available collateral. Here's some payment deferments that we have applied. So for those loans, all disaster loans, including economic injury loans, have been deferred payments until 2022. If the loans that were made in calendar year 2020, the first payment due will be extended from 12 months to 24 months now from the date of note. And then disaster loans made in calendar year 2021, the first payment due will be extended from 12 months to 18 months from the date of the note. Okay, our targeted idle advance, I'm not going to go through all the detail on this. This is basically very targeted to low-income communities, and SBA is reaching out to those small business owners that would be eligible for this. So there's really not any action that the small business owner needs to take on their end. We will be sending out emails on this, so just be sure to watch your email box. And then this is just our resources, of course, how to get a hold of the SBDCs or the WBCs in our state, as well as our Utah district office here. We have a main phone number, main email line there. And there's information on how to get a hold of that Office of Disaster Assistance, as well as various websites. And with that, Megan, I'm going to turn it back to you for questions.
Awesome. I'm excited for some of these questions. There's some new ones that I haven't had yet. So the first question is on the detailed expenditure report, will actual receipts be required after the RRF funds are received?
Megan, can you read that again quick?
This is on the detailed expenditure report. Will actual receipts be required after the RRF fund is received?
I believe that you have to keep those on file in case SBA comes back later and decides to audit a particular loan, but I don't think it will be required with the report itself that's filed.
Awesome. That's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure that I was on the right page. Next one is on idle loans. Are those idle loans accruing interest? Well, the payments are deferred, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a fairly low interest rate, but it will be accruing. Yeah.
The next one's a common question we're getting a lot. I purchased my restaurant March 2nd of 2020 and was therefore unable to apply for PPP loan. I do have access to the 2019 books, and the restaurant was in operation for 10 years prior. Would my application fall under calculation 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I believe in that case, if they have the previous records, they can probably use calculation 1.
They have to have the payroll records in addition to just the financial records, right?
Right. Yep.
That's the one that I'm finding that a lot of restaurants don't have access to that purchased, is they miss the payroll records. They have the financials, but not the payroll records. So we need to make sure you have them both.
And if not, then you can go to the other calculations and use those.
Yeah. What other questions are there? And if you'd like to ask your question yourself, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. We have a small enough group that that's okay. So I got another question come in. If you have a C Corp this fiscal year end for the RRF fund, do you use the fiscal year report or the calendar information? This is not clear in the shuttered venue.
Right. And I believe somewhere in the RRF part, though, it does say you can use the fiscal year. I think that might be in the FAQs. I'd have to go back and look, but.
Okay. In the application for the RRF, it automatically puts my PPP loan information in the calculation. Do I need to calculate it as well in my gross receipts?
Well, the PPP amount is not included in the gross receipt calculation. Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the gross
answer-
receipt, yeah,
Yeah, so the answer would be no, you don't include that in your gross receipts.
right.
The next question is, I was accepted for the first PPP, but rejected for the second draw, but nothing changed. Not sure what you're asking there. Are you asking is nothing changed for the second draw PPP? Did you show proof of loss of the 25%?
Yeah. Did your lender indicate to you that there was some kind of hold code that they were getting? No.
You can unmute yourself and talk.
Yeah.
Easier that way.
So,
It's not lit. Hold on. Maybe it's me.
Yeah, you muted
There we
me.
go. There
Okay.
we go. Okay.
Okay. Did the first PPP, everything was fine, received it for about $5,260 or something like that. Then applied for it a second time, all the same information, but of course we showed 25%. Actually, it was more like 50% at one point. It was more like 50% total for the year. And it was still rejected, and they never really came back and said why. But if there's something, you know, there was some kind of a goof in there that I did when I was applying, I don't know, but
did you use the same lender for both PPP loans?
yes.
Yeah, so that should have made it easier.
Yeah.
And they never came back and said that there was some hold code they were getting or anything?
Nope, nothing. They never came back with anything unless I missed an email somewhere.
Huh. I mean, the
Well,
lender should,
Just got a letter
lenders-
that said we were rejected.
the lender should be able to provide some kind of explanation, but I don't know.
Okay,
Unless
well, I
some
guess
num-
at this point, it's a moot point. But I had one more question since I had you, since I'm unmuted. I've already started the application for the RRF, but I may have accidentally put in receipt of one of the loans or grants that we received from from Cook County. Is not since it says not to put any in there, but I think I forgot to make the adjustment. Is that going to really matter when it comes right down to it? It's just going to take money away.
Right, well, yeah, exactly. That would just reduce the amount of your award. And I don't know if they've got something built into the software or anything that figures that out or not. Not sure.
Well, it's only $10,000, so it's like, so when it comes down to it, the grand total is what matters. But
And
that's
of
not
course-
going to cause any rejections. It'll just cause a decrease, correct?
Right. And of course, until you've actually submitted the completed application, you can't change things.
I did. I've submitted it yesterday.
Oh,
I was
okay.
online at 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
But maybe you could maybe call the center hotline too and tell them your situation.
Okay, I'll have to go back through the paperwork and make sure to see if that was what I did, because everything crashed and I had to start over. So I just started typing in numbers without triple checking everything. the second time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question that says, the calculation showed at the end of the RRF application for award is the one that we could get if we have all our ducks in a row, right?
Yeah, I mean, if your documentation's correct, then that's, yeah. If what you're referring to is the amount that it shows that your award will be, yeah.
Okay, I think I missed one right here. How do the pending PPP loans affect the application? Will the RRF be adjusted, or will there be a way to update the application if the funds become approved later?
I think what we said, I'm trying to look back here, is that if you've got a pending, well, RRF applicants are advised to complete their PPP application in advance of the RRF application. If that's what you're talking about there.
I believe if you're awarded the RRF, it will cancel your pending
Yes.
PPP
Yeah.
application. So
Yeah.
if there's still funds, which sounds like there won't be, it will cancel that application if you're awarded, because that didn't get taken into consideration. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and of course, you don't want to wait to do your RRF application. This money could go quickly. So waiting for that pending PPP to get approved would probably be a lesser route. So like Megan says, go ahead and get that RRF application in, get it approved, and then it will cancel the PPP.
So the next question is, when will we know if we need additional documentation? I'm super confident that I had everything for it, but now I am freaking out. Ha 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 ha.
That's the same way I felt after I got my tax returns in last week. I did all right. What we've been told is that there should be about a 14-day turnaround for that initial review. And if there's additional documentation, they should be getting back to you shortly after that. Also, I think there's a way to check in the portal of your status, or call the center hotline if you need a status update, if you haven't heard for a while.
Okay, so this is the question, and I believe it's the same person that asked about they bought their restaurant. As far as payroll for 2019 is concerned, in my application situation, I do have the total payroll expenditures amount for the year in the ledger. Do I need proof other than that to apply via first application method?
I know that there's preferred documentation and accepted documentation that we had. I'm trying to look back at this for calculation 1 and 2, you know, and that's really just talking about the financials. It's not talking about the payroll documentation. So I'm not exactly sure.
I think that's a hotline question.
Yeah, I would call the center hotline on that one.
The nice part about calling the hotline is you have a recorded documentation of your answer, the question and answer. So if it comes back to bite you, you can say, well, I have it recorded that this is what they told me. Just saying. And will we be taxed on the RRF money? Do we know that yet?
I don't think we've had guidance. I haven't seen it in the FAQs.
I haven't seen anything on that yet.
That's always the hot question for SVOG, PPP, all those. Yep.
Yep. Erica, your hand is raised, but I haven't seen a question come through for you. Do you want to ask your question? Erica, you're muted. Okay, maybe not. Anybody else have any other questions before we close out? Could you please review briefly requirements for application 3?
Okay, would it help if I shared the screen again, maybe?
You can do that or I can do that, either one. I have all 3 calculations right here.
So here's
There we go.
here's the documentation required for calculation 3. For example, and if you need more clarification, for example, what's a CPA comfort letter? That's in the FAQs that are online. You can see what that entails. You know, you've got your externally or internally prepared financial statements. So you can see the list there of what's required. And the preferred one, the preferred list, the documents listed in the preferred section are the ones that are the best evidence that they would like to see. And if you don't have that, then, you know, send them the accepted documents, and they'll work with those.
So the next question is, what date is this open to everyone to apply other than women, veterans, and disadvantaged?
Well, it's open to everybody to apply right now. Everybody can get their applications in, and they'll flag them there as to whether they're women-owned or veteran-owned and put them in the priority pool, but everybody can get the applications in now.
So you don't have to wait, you can apply now.
Yep, get it in there.
Yeah, don't wait. Could you please, oh, whoops, wrong one. Where am I at? I'm not allowed to unmute myself. Well, that's not cool. Let me make that unmute themselves. You should be able to now, Erica. Try, interrupt me if you need, if you're. It says host will not allow it. Well, let's try another way.
Okay, now it works.
There we go. I was gonna say, there we
Okay.
go.
I was the person that asked about the pending PPP application. Literally, the client's PPP is at the bank, which should be approved sometime soon. So we wanted to make sure if they need to cancel that or if they need to assume the amount, which we can calculate what that PPP amount would be and put that in this RRF application so that it doesn't cause problems later through the approval process because they qualify as disadvantaged applicant.
Do you know if the lender has submitted it to SBA?
I do not.
You might want to check that first. If the lender hasn't submitted the application, you might want to cancel it. But if they have, then it might be a little more difficult.
Right. Well, the issue is if the funding runs out on the RRF and they don't get the answer back, they would run out of funding on PPP or pass an application deadline and miss out on everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if you keep that PPP application in there, it will get canceled if the RRF one goes through first. So I guess it doesn't hurt to have both of them writing in there at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yes. So with that, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to, because right now they don't have second draw. They have a first PPP loan, which the system recognized. They don't have the second draw yet, which they've submitted that and they had to go back and give them the tax return copies are the only things that they are waiting on. So I don't know how far they are in the process for the application, but we just want to make sure it wasn't going to cancel them out of the runnings for the RRF just because they have this pending PPP.
No, it shouldn't cancel out the RRF application. Now,
So
it would be different if you had an SVOG application.
Right. No, they don't have that. So will it
Right.
reduce, like when they go to process, say right now they don't have a second draw. So there's not that calculation in there. But if someone's working on the processing for the RRF and now the PPP is approved and they can see that, will they adjust?
Yeah,
The-
I have to believe they've built into the technology a cross check on that so that it'll handle that.
Good to know. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Perfect. The next question is there a chance we could get rejected for the RRF?
Is there a chance that yeah, I guess I mean, if somehow you don't meet the eligibility requirements, or if you're flagged for something in the vetting portion of it, or, I mean, there's several reasons why I guess it could be rejected. It's not going to be an automatic approval for sure. Or if your documentation's not complete or whatever.
The next question is, on the need to provide 3 months of bank statements, how do I decide which months?
Yeah, we got this clarified from headquarters that it should be February, March, and April. However, it being the beginning of May, and if your bank hasn't produced the May statement yet, they've said you could use January, February, and March.
Awesome. Any other questions before we wrap it up? We've got about 8 more minutes. I guess it would help if I check out Facebook too, huh? On Facebook, one of the questions is, I have a bankruptcy on my record. Will I get turned down for the RRF?
Well, and again, that would depend on what the status of the bankruptcy. If it's a pending bankruptcy where it hasn't been resolved, where you haven't gotten a discharge or a confirmed plan, you're going to be ineligible. But if it's a completed bankruptcy, and by that I mean you got a discharge in a Chapter 7 or you confirmed a Chapter 13 plan or whatever, then you would still be eligible.
It says we need a POS statement, but we no longer have the last year's. But is it in the bank statements? I'm not sure what you're asking there. Go ahead and come on mute, off mute, and so Erica, the 3 months are the latest 3 months. So it's February, March, and April. If April is not completed by your bank, then you can do January, February, March.
And they said you cannot go back farther than that. That's the latest you can go back.
Okay, now try to unmute yourself.
Okay. In one of these documents or slides, I saw that it requires the 2020 point of sale report, gross receipts, which basically means they need a report from the point of sale, like from the credit card, the credit card machine or whatever it is, statements, but haven't kept all the reports or all the statements. So therefore, would the bank statements which show every incoming be acceptable? We don't have everything for 2020, but will the bank statements from 2020 do the job? Because it shows all incoming.
Yeah, and I'm not positive about that. The point of sale report, of course, is one of the second level documents. So it would be, if you have something that's preferred, like your internally or externally prepared financial statements or income statements of profit and losses, looks like those would suffice.
I forgot to upload the 4506-T. Everything else went up though.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I didn't see the 4506-T. It didn't require it when I was doing the application. It said I uploaded everything, so I forgot to send that one too. So I guess I got better pull it and make sure it's ready to go for the next request of documents.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So I guess bank statements will do the job if necessary. And yeah, I have a letter. I think we had to create one of those last time for something where it requested what you mentioned. I forgot what it's called.
The financial statements or
The
yeah.
letter. The letter.
Oh, the
profession-
CPA comfort letter.
Yeah. Or third party in this case is what they accepted. So the SBA was very accommodating for that. So, okay, then we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
For calculation 3, what is the basis for the calculation award amount?
Are you still seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Let's see, where's the? Okay, so you can see that there. So it's the amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020. So can you see that sentence there? Where it, so the eligible expenses between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2021, minus the 2020 gross receipts, and of course, minus any PPP loan amounts. Is that what they're looking for? Calculation, that's the calculation 3.
Does that help you, Michael? Yes, that does. Awesome. So I've got a question on Facebook that says, I applied for the RRF funds. My current status is IRS verification. Will the backlog on the IRS hold my application up until funds are exhausted? I think we had that question this morning.
Yeah, we had that same exact one. And of course, everybody has to do the IRS verification with the 4506T that we were just talking about, right?
Yep, that has been
So
a big harburn.
So all those are going in. So I don't believe that will hold people's applications up because everybody has to have that. They have to have the IRS verification. So I think that's something that will come through later afterwards.
Awesome. I'm getting a lot of thanks for the guidance and thanks for the information. Does anybody else have any questions before we close it up? We're coming up on the 3 o'clock hour. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and close this down, you guys. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We know that this can be a daunting process, and we also know that questions will arise. We know every single business is independent and very unique, and so there's going to be additional questions that come up as you start filling out your application process. Please reach out to your SBDC or Women's Business Center so they can help you through that process. If you do not know how to get a hold of your SBDC center, go ahead and on the back of the workbook that I emailed out to everybody last week, there is a QR code. If you do that QR code, it'll take you to a form to request additional information. Put your information in there and I will help link you up to your closest SBDC or Women's Business Center. We really appreciate all those that take the time today to present from the SBA. We know they have a busy schedule with everything that's going on. I know that their phones were literally ringing off the hooks yesterday. And so we really appreciate that. Thank you both, John and Marla, for taking the time. And Jackie was here earlier. We really appreciate that. And everybody that's here. You have a wonderful day. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to reach out over email with any additional questions and we'll help you get those answered. You guys all have a wonderful day. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Z, how do you say your name, hon? Zisha? Zisha, awesome. Reply to my email that I sent the code out to, and I will send you that. How's that sound? Perfect. If you guys want the workbook and you didn't get the workbook, send me an email and I will get you, I will reply to the email and I will send it to you. Have a wonderful day.